everybody. Welcome to the Underwater Photography Show. I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex without a cold, Mustard. You do sound a little bit blocked up today.
Yeah, if I sound a little honky and goosey, I'm kind of sick, but I'll power through.
Are you feeling all right, or just feeling just blocked up?
Yeah, just all sorts of blocked up stuffiness. 2 months of travel will do that to you. But today we have our next installment in Inspirational Instagram. I believe this is number 9, and we will probably have many more to come as they continue to be popular and get good feedback. So,
it's great to look at pictures as well. So I've pulled the first one up, which is by Diver Guy 33, and it's a little tube blenny. I'm guessing this is probably from the Pacific side of Mexico or something like that.
Costa Rica.
Yeah. So so it looks like a tube blenny, but one of the Pacific species. I don't know these species particularly well, so I can't tell you the species, but I knew it was Pacific more from the coral actually than from the blenny. So.
Yeah, I really like this one just because I like the pattern and the textures on the coral around him, and of course the fish itself is super cute, and I like those big giant. I think they're orange. Pardon me if I got the color wrong, but the big orange eye rings around his eyes, and they always look so. All of these kind of genre of blennies always look so shocked if you get them looking at you with both eyes, and obviously they don't really express emotion, but that's how it looks to me. So they're easy to anthropomorphize.
Yeah, absolutely. This one's got pink lipstick as well, which is quite cool. I think I would say it's more of a classic with these to go really head on, really central composition with them in the pictures. It's not the only way to shoot them. But I like the fact that this isn't just going down the obvious route that everyone does. And I think the off-center composition works well. And because that coral is so textured, it does create a very nice three-dimensional feel, pulling your eye down and into its hole in the coral. So yeah, it's really effective shot. Do you know Diver Guy? No. Okay.
I don't.
I know in the past we've often known who the people are, even if they've got sort of a random name. But I'm presuming he's just a man or a guy who's a diver, rather than he might of course be called Guy or himself. Right, let's move along to an easier handle for me to get my teeth into, and that's Stephen _Kovacs _photography. With this great beast, and there's always amazing beasts on Steve Kovacs' Instagram feed, but this one's from Palm Beach, Florida.
This one is a swallower of some sort. So I don't know what they look like as adults, but this thing's pretty cool as a larval one. And it's rare these days that a blackwater picture gets me to stop and pay attention to it. But the symmetry of all the fins flared out around the face and the eye contact and the teeth. I think this one's really, and Steve's got his whole Instagram page is just loaded with cool blackwater species, always photographed really nicely. But this one I think stands out even from that bunch, mostly because of the symmetry of the fins. And it's a really cool fish.
Yeah, it looks a bit like a 4-leaf clover. It could be a good St. Patrick's Day post.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really cool, really, amazing image. I think, blackwater photography, rewards diving skill and it rewards perseverance. And the people that put the effort in, they get the results and they get the subject matter, the cool subjects that not everyone gets to see. And this is a great subject and it's very nicely photographed. Right, I'm going to roll us on to number 3, which is by LMBE Diver. And it's a photo of a blue ring octopus clambering across a painted frogfish. And, I like pictures like this because it's obviously not staged. No one picks up blue ring octopuses. But it's a nice example of how, if this had been, if this was a nudibranch perched on top of the frogfish, a different type of mollusk, you might suspect foul play. But of course, you do get these unusual situations. And I know when we're competition judging, I always like to remind judges that, just because you haven't seen something doesn't mean it's necessarily faked. Although, in all honesty, we always take the more cautious approach. But it's always difficult in a contest because people do tend to show you to enter pictures of the amazing things that they've seen. Anyway, sorry, that was a lot of chat.
It's two, like you said, it's a really cool natural history moment, and it's two of my favorite. It's a frogfish and an octopus mashup, and they're two of my favorite things. So seeing a picture like this, it's hard to skip over it. And I like that he managed to catch it so that the eye is just peeking out from behind the tentacle of the octopus. I think that really helps because the frogfish looks kind of like, what the hell are you doing?
He's like, don't move, I don't want to get bitten.
Yeah. So it's just a really cool moment of two very cool animals meeting together.
Yeah, it is a really cool moment, and it's definitely one that makes you smile. And I think any underwater photo that brings out any sort of emotional reaction in you is always a successful one. So yeah, I really like this for all those elements. It's pictures don't have to be photographically perfect in order for them to be really good photographs.
Yeah.
And this picture isn't photographically perfect, but it works, and that's what's important. Right, into cooler waters now. And this is a shot by Mullen Divers. And is this a China rockfish?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's when I'm up there, I know them all really well, but it's been a while, and it's a long way from where I live. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I like these. I like the China rockfish in general. One, because I think they're one of the longer living fish in general, outside of like Greenland sharks and things like that. I think they can live over 100 years. And they're not overly common. This was shot up by God's Pocket. They're not overly common up there. I've seen a couple of them. And they're usually pretty shy. This reminds me almost of a painting. And I'm sure some of that is the processing behind it, but I love just a little bit of light on the rocks surrounding the fish, so it's not just a fish in the darkness. And I actually like the central composition on this one a lot because it's framed by the rocks around it. And I'm definitely biased towards pictures from God's Pocket because it's one of my favorite places. But I keep coming back and looking at this one, and I think it's largely because it has a painterly aesthetic to it.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of how subtle can be powerful. Yeah. And I think that, particularly with the rise of, people sharing pictures on social media, the pictures that typically get reaction on social media, and this is obviously our Instagram review feature, are more typically the more obvious in your face, impossible to ignore type shots that grab people's attention when they're scrolling through pictures on their phone. And subtle pictures often, get passed over. But I think this is a wonderful example of how the subtle detail in this shot just draws you in. And I love how the patterning on the fish is sort of feels like it matches, and it almost works as a camouflage in amongst the barnacle covered rocks. Also, I find that the top of the picture almost looks a little bit like a reflection. Like this is in super shallow water. I know it's not, but it's, and I really like that aesthetic. But I particularly like the subtlety of this shot.
Yeah.
I do think you probably could take a little bit off the top and the right, and just give it a 10-15% crop. I think might strengthen it slightly.
I will say I only found this account recently, and all of the he doesn't have a ton of images up there yet, but all of the images on there, he seems to have, his style seems to be towards that more subtle look versus the in your face, here, bang, here's the animal kind of photography. And I really enjoyed going through his Instagram. So if anybody else enjoys this picture, you'll enjoy all the rest of his stuff as well.
Oh, that's fantastic, because it's what we all love in underwater photography is someone who brings a really unique vision rather than simply does it the same as everyone else, just has done it in a different place or done it etc. Right, I'm going to move us along to Nigel Mocha, and it's a photo of a lobster, or European lobster as they'll be known internationally, cruising along off the west coast of Ireland and down in County Mayo. I think this is a beautiful example of temperate water shooting. I think it's it celebrates the color, the clarity, and the cool life that's in that part of the world. Compositionally, this one doesn't work for me. I really like Nigel's photography and have done for over 20 years, or probably 25 years since I first known Nigel. And although we've never really dived together, we've run into each other a fair amount around the world and been to lots of similar places at similar times. This picture here, it's a little bit foregroundy for me. And I think that, probably the nature of the dive site, but I think that there was, the beauty and the color of it is great. I think I'd like a composition that drew me in a little bit more across the frame, corner to corner.
Yeah, I think the reason I chose this is largely because, and we've talked about this before on other Instagram ones, is how this is such a foreign scene compared to where I normally dive that I'm automatically drawn to it and more interested in it. And I prefer cold water diving, I think. So, but yeah, there's so much color and life just on that one rock. It's pretty remarkable to see. Ireland is a place that, the average diver never really thinks about going to, myself included, generally, for diving. So to see underwater images from there is pretty unique, I think.
Yeah, and I think it would be a great destination to visit. And I know any overseas photographer who, is a decent person and would be so welcomed there. And, they would definitely roll out the green carpet for you, and and I think the Irish community would so enjoy people going there and doing serious photography, doing serious diving. I think you'd have a lot of fun doing a trip there.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful coastline all the way down the west coast. Right. Moving along, and I'd really recommend actually people look through more. Nigel does fantastic photography all around the world, and I think it's often, you'll see pictures from places you've been, and then you'll also see his work from Ireland, which shows how productive it can be down there. Right. We're now looking at Helen _ Weln. I'm not sure how to pronounce your surname. Sorry, Helen, if that is your surname. And it's a lovely shot of these shallow water anemones. I'm guessing, and this really is a stab in the dark, this might be South Africa, just because I've seen anemone shots from that part of the world, and I haven't seen anemones like this with this mix of colors in other places.
Yeah, so it is South Africa, and whether it's landscapes or underwater, I'm a sucker for reflections. I'll almost always enjoy a reflection image. They're obviously much more common in landscape photography than underwater, but this is almost a perfect mirror image on top, and it kind of leads you down that anemone tunnel into the back of the frame, which I really like. And all of the different colors of anemones is really cool, because there are places in the Pacific Northwest where you can shoot similar-ish images, but it's only one species of anemone, so you usually don't get all the different color variation, which I think helps make this one a little more unique as well.
Yeah, I really love the perspective in this picture. I think I'd probably like a little bit more depth of field. It goes, very blurry on the edges, and just because that kind of big red anemone on the right hand side and its reflection are very pretty, I think it would the picture would be nice with just a little bit more detail there to enjoy. The composition invites you to explore the middle of the picture, but I'd like to be able to explore more of the frame around it too. But I think what's great is that the photographer has waited to get this perfect reflection. Yeah. And them and their camera, maybe they weren't in the water for this, it might be a very small rock pool or something, but they've waited for the surface to get completely sheltered from the wind, for it to be not disturbed by them moving the camera. And those things, people would be in there, they'd do the shot, but they wouldn't get that detail right. And I love how good the reflection is in this picture, which comes from the perseverance of the photographer, not settling for an okay shot and really pushing for something really special.
So I will say I believe she only shoots natural light, which may be why she was limited in terms of her depth of field, so she couldn't stop down too much more maybe. But
it could be a flat port as well, actually.
Also,
it could be. Anyway, I really like it. It's really nice, really different, and I think what people are doing around the world with available light only underwater photography, it's really transforming underwater photography, and it's a very different look to. There's a lot of free divers around the world doing really, really interesting and different underwater photography with available light, which has been made possible by the quality of the cameras these days in particular. And also, I guess, the fact that we have media where the output file doesn't have to have the ultimate in image quality.
Yeah.
Because people are looking at stuff on screens and on phones where you don't need a ton of resolution. If it is quite a noisy result, again, you don't need the result. So I think I'd really encourage anyone to do more available light underwater photography. It's so good for your photography as well. Right, into what looks to me like the Mediterranean, but I'm not sure. And it's Oscar Montferrer, and it's a photo of a sea fan with a basket star climbing up it. But I'm guessing it's a Mediterranean sea fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Mediterranean. I love basket stars. I think they're really cool animals. And I haven't seen. I used to see that when I dove the Caribbean more. I would see them not infrequently. I haven't seen one in, I don't know, 15 years now probably. And I think this one's pink, right?
Yeah, it's a really nice color. It's a really nice sort of subtle pink.
Yeah. So I really like all the different colors in here, from the reds to the yellow. Well, and it probably looks different to me, but the reds, yellows, pinks in here. And it almost has a studio feel because of how he lit it. He kind of cross lit it, getting a lot of texture in there as well, and then having the background go black. I think it works really well for this. And the basket stars are just a really, really cool animal. And I like the fact that it's not totally like furled in on itself. Because a lot of times when you see them, that's all you see unless they're out feeding at night.
Yeah, there's enough disc in the middle of this one, isn't there, for you to understand what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, really nice. Right. And our final image is taken by the Moonlit Reef, all one word, and it's a fish scale detail. I'm guessing probably a parrotfish, just because it's colourful and from the Caribbean, but I can't really pick this. Maybe a male spotlight, but I'm really struggling.
I think it's that one, yeah.
Yeah, but really hard to pick the species. Anyway, from Bonaire in the Caribbean, I can see the location on that one. But very attractive, very nicely composed. Whether that's in camera or with just a little bit of crop afterwards. But the green, yellow, blue color combination. I really like the balance of the frame. I like the jagged transitions between the colors, and I think it's very effective.
And I also like this because it's not a picture I would normally think to take. I don't think I have any of these kind of pictures in my portfolio. So again, I'm drawn to it because it's unique to me. But like the primary colors in here, well, red's primary color, but the largely primary colors in here, and then how they're relatively even across the frame, works really nicely. And I like the sheen on the blue. It's something you would expect to see out of the water if something was wet, but it actually works. It looks really cool, and obviously the parrotfish is in the water, but it looks really cool there as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a good point that, you say, I would say in my early days in underwater photography, when photographers like Chris Newbert were hugely influential on the community, there was, and also the limitations of the more basic camera equipment back then. There was, a lot of detailed texture, abstract type shots like this being done by photographers because your autofocus, you either didn't have it or you couldn't get the face. So you went for the side of the fish. But, joking aside, I think that a lot of photographers these days are not, we tend to be influenced by what's around us. And while it's great to get on Instagram and look at all the latest work that everyone's producing, it is also good to, go and seek out some of the older books on underwater photography and, and accept that, quality, technology and endeavor moves on, and not every picture is going to be a banger by today's standards. But I think there's a lot of inspiration that can come out of some of that earlier work. And given that you can probably pick up a lot of these books for almost no money, they're well worth, getting and gathering together as a resource for your own inspiration, so that your own photography has a slightly different source of inspiration to what everyone else is doing. by seeking out different. And this for me feels very much like a shot. It's a very, very good shot, but it's a shot you could easily have seen in the 80s in underwater photography, where lots of people were doing this type of work. And it's like you say, it's a little bit forgotten these days, and therefore it's got a freshness to it again, which is really nice.
And I will say, one of the, because you're talking about old books, Norbert Wu has I still have one of his original books. He still has images in there that, admittedly, the image quality is not up to today's standards, but the pictures themselves are still spectacular, which I think is pretty remarkable that they've, hung on in terms of their like wow factor, for lack of a better term, however many years since he's put those books out. Which I think is a cool testament to his skill as a photographer, or anybody's skill as a photographer if they have enduring pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's well worth remembering that you don't need to just look at what's being done now as inspiration as a photographer. Right, that's us wrapping up for this episode. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and we'll be back again soon with another episode of the Underwater Photography Show. Bye-bye.